Welcome to Stuff You Missed in History Class, a production of iHeartRadio. Happy Friday, I'm Holly Fry.
And I'm Tracy V. Wilson.
We talked about Barbette this week.
We did.
Barbette, who I love, but I feel like if I traveled back in time and met Barbette, Barbette would not like me.
Oh, yeah?
I don't think I'm fastidious enough for Barbette.
Sure.
He was all about impeccability, which I don't own that trait.
I was going to say it was too much gum chewing.
Possibly. Too much of anything.
Yeah.
I think Barbette would find modern culture and the way people dress very casually utterly horrifying. But
Sure.
that's just my theory. Although, in that same 1969 article that we talked about, one of the things that comes up is the person that connected Stiegmuller to him finally, because Stiegmuller had reached out and gotten no response and ended up going through a professor that knew them or could get them connected.
Mm-hmm.
And this professor was apparently a very casual dresser, but Barbette was very complimentary of him and compared him to like royalty. And there was this moment of confusion of like, are we all talking about the same thing? Like what's so he obviously had like a magnanimous spirit and was willing to, be kind and didn't just dismiss people. But
Sure.
I think I might be too sloppy jalopy for Barbette. The Alpharetta sisters, his first act.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little offhand detail that's it's simultaneously like really yucky, but also so indicative of the world of vaudeville that was going on at the time,
Mm-hmm.
which is that, we mentioned that one of the Alpharetta sisters had died. And the one that remained that was to become his partner in this trapeze and aerial act was the wife of a comedian named Happy Doc Holland, who was a blackface comedian.
Oh,
and
goodness.
This just kind of gets, mentioned very casually. And it's like that
Right.
because that was totally de rigueur at the
Yeah.
time. So it's like you have to remember how many just weird things were going on in vaudeville that people were perfectly willing to accept. And then there was Barbette, who not everyone
Right.
was willing to accept, but some people loved.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about like female impersonators in vaudeville before. You have selected our Julian Elting episode as an upcoming Saturday classic because it pairs so nicely with this one. But like there was a lot of sort of gender impersonation, gender performance
Yes.
in the world of vaudeville.
Yes.
Obviously, it did not originate with vaudeville. That's
the first one. No.
Yeah, it was. But that's there's a whole history there.
Yeah, I find myself so fascinated thinking about how Barbette would fit into the world today and how he might identify and how he might, whether he would be an out gay man. Like there are other indicators. We mentioned that he clearly had relationships with men. There was one thing that I found and I wasn't able to really substantiate, although it came from, a fairly reliable source, but that he had actually been arrested in England.
Mm-hmm.
For the way it was worded sounded pretty benign, like basically being found in an embrace with another man, whatever that may mean.
Sure.
But that as a consequence, he couldn't perform there anymore because he couldn't get performance permits,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which, I don't know that he cared since he was so happy in Paris. But
Right.
those are the kinds of little things that pop up. But again, there's never any indication that there was a special person in his life.
Yeah.
Other than possibly Jean Cocteau, and the way that relationship kind of peters out is a little unclear to me as well. Some of this is made extra fuzzy because one of the sources that a lot of people cite is a very well-written historical novel. So,
yeah, that's tricky.
It seems to be very well researched and it's very well written, but like there are obviously elements that are speculative that I think some people have taken as factual gospel truth.
Yeah,
And that has
yeah.
confused things quite a bit. So I spent a lot of time just trying to like eliminate anything that seemed like it may have come from there. Again, not to deride it as a piece of writing, but just it's
Yeah, that can be really tricky. There's been a couple of times when I have sort of reviewed a historical novel for the show because it was something that like was described as being really grounded in uh like as much factual detail as
yeah,
possible, but like the same thing, like when you're writing a novel, you're making choices about
right.
making it a good novel, and so that's not something that I think can work in most of the time as a like a source for the show. Um, Also, we talked about this a little bit in our Ruth Benedict, I think behind the scenes lately, that like so often when we're talking about people living at a time when like any kind of same-sex behavior was in a lot of places more outlawed than today
Yeah.
because obviously there are places that still
Still
illegal.
criminalized. Yeah.
Like there's so much of what historians are trying to do involves like reading between the lines
Hmm.
and kind of like eking things out from the margins. And so it can be really tricky. And then aside from that, we've talked before about like not wanting to assign people an identity that like they didn't have the same cultural access to.
Yeah,
It's a tricky
it
thing. So,
is.
like, this is yet another person that to me, like, clearly in the big umbrella of LGBTQ,
Yeah.
IA plus history, but like specifics that it's okay to have questions about and not know definitively.
Well, and he's one that makes it extra unique because so much of his work and what made him famous was messing with that whole system
Oh, sure.
anyway.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
it's like, oh, you think I am a beautiful woman, but in fact, I am a beautiful man. So it's unclear to me exactly how the relationship with Cocteau fizzled out, or if he just wanted to come back to the U.S. or what. He does state pretty clearly in that 1969 interview that he was really dismayed about the film and what had happened and how he felt like he had been a little manipulated
Uh-huh.
into being part of something he wasn't comfortable with. So
Sure.
that may or may not have been the source of part of their
Yeah.
fizzling out. One thing that's really, really interesting, right? We talked about how Cocteau had gotten Man Ray to take these portraits of him, which are very beautiful.
Mhm.
There is one, at least one, that's in the collection of the Met, but it's not on display. They have it on their website, but it's like they have a note about permissions that like it can't even be enlarged from what they show on the website, and
Oh,
you
wow.
can't download it and they can't sell it, and that they don't have it viewable at the museum. So you kind of only get little pictures. It got used on a book cover at one point. That is the other thing. There is a source I would love to have, which is a book written by Cocteau about Barbette.
Mhm.
To get it on the secondhand market was a couple $100.
I was gonna
And
say $800.
there are times when I'll be like, yep. And I kind of wanted it, but it was like, it was not going to get here in time.
Mhm.
And even the dust jacket for that book, which features a Man Ray photo, is like $50 just for the dust jacket.
Oh my
So that
goodness.
is an indicator of how cherished this book is.
Yeah.
So did not get my hands on that one, unfortunately. I want to talk a little bit more, because I mentioned I would, about what a jerk J. Brooks Atkinson was in that review.
Yeah.
Because I literally, at first as I'm reading it, I'm like, he points out that, somebody's reaction was that it was god awful. But then he is kind of mocking that woman. And I was like, is he actually trying to say, like, no, this is art and she's too ignorant to get it? But then as he goes on and he's like, oh, what are the Europeans going to do if Barbette breaks his neck? And I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't like anything about this. This whole thing is gross. And he became very influential in his career. So
Yeah.
I hope he learned kindness. It's always a weird one.
Yeah.
Oh, Barbette. You can see some video. It's quite grainy of him um doing his early some of his early acts with the circus. Again, that whole Erford whirling sensations using your teeth to support, that is one of the most terrifying acts of any circus or aerialist for me ever. Like, I have one of those things where I just like broken teeth weird me out, and the thought of it is not no. Yeah, Austin really embraces Barbette. Whether Barbette would agree with that is a matter of debate, I
And
suppose.
that goes back to like my earlier question in the episode of like, I have no idea what the perception of Austin was when Barbette was alive. But I feel like the Austin vibe now.
Yeah, probably not quite the same.
Yeah.
There is certainly speculation about why he chose to end his life when he did. We don't know. It is all speculative, right? Like,
Yeah.
his family very purposely kept that quiet. Like, they didn't want to speak on it. So we don't have any details, which is probably right. And it's certainly in line with their wishes.
Right. Well, and I think also mental health is complicated.
Yes.
And I think a lot of times when there's this like a search to find a reason for something, like even if there is, in quotation marks, a reason, like that might be really oversimplified.
Yeah, and I understand the impulse because people want to make sense of behaviors that don't make sense to them.
Right.
And be like, oh, but there is a cause and effect I can point to, and that makes it more understandable and something that I could avoid in my life. Like, it's finding ways to say that scary thing is not ever gonna touch you.
Yeah.
So I fully understand it, but in his case, there's not really any information about it. We know his health was not great in the last few years of his life, but that's all we know.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But I really, I want more Barbette. I know there was a play staged about Barbette in the Austin area, I think in 2002. And there were write-ups about it then, and it was very well reviewed at the time, at least locally. And I didn't find anything else about it though beyond that. So hopefully this is a person I would be happy to have a movie made by a really skilled writer and director.
I just looked up this photo that's at the Met on my phone while you were talking, and that is beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, Man Ray is already and all of these photos are like that, where he's often in full hair and makeup, but then, he's only partially in the undergarments of a woman. You can clearly see that his chest and his shoulders, he was very petite, but he obviously is very strong. Like, he had to have been for his work.
To do this aerial work, yeah.
And, where that part is not yet part of the illusion of womanhood. And it makes just all of these really compelling images. There are some portraits of him in full drag that are so spectacularly gorgeous and glamorous that they're swoon-worthy as art. They're just so beautiful. So if you want to go noodle around on the internet for pretty pictures, that is a perfectly delightful way to spend an hour, in my opinion.
Yeah. This week we talked about square dancing.
Yep.
So we both learned some square dancing in school, and I will tell you, I was into it, and here's why. At my school, square dancing was one of the things we learned as we moved away from sort of the kindergarten level PE, where we did stuff like playing with a parachute, or rolling around on scooters that I'm surprised we didn't all cause ourselves serious injury with. And we moved into a lot more team sports, and I was bad at all team sports. I couldn't throw a ball. I couldn't hit a ball. I couldn't catch a ball. Occasionally I would have some weird run of luck where I would actually get the basketball into the basket, and I would be like, maybe I can do it now. Nope. It was a weird fluke. But what I could do was follow instructions. So square dancing was my preferred gym activity. You don't look like you have that same experience.
Well, I have to confess, I think I have many times, what a shrew of a child I was, because I did not encounter square dancing in school until I moved in the 4th grade from the Seattle area to the Florida Panhandle.
All right.
And by the time we got to square dancing in PE, I had begun to take ballet lessons and fancied myself a prima ballerina.
Okay.
And I was the biggest snoots patoots, where I was like, I would enjoy square dancing if anyone else in this class could do it. Like, I was that horrible kid that was
Fun.
like, you suck, none of these people are worthy to be my partner. Like, I literally pitched to the teacher, can I just do it by myself? Because I didn't want to deal with other kids.
I honestly love this story.
What a shrew.
My judgmentalness was slightly different. We did the thing where we were going to do, actually, I think what we were going to do was the Virginia reel, which is technically not a square dance because it's done in 2 rows, not in a square. And so there's that whole thing of like, should this be under the umbrella of square dancing or not? And my partner was a kid, I am sure as an adult, that his home life had other stuff going on that I did not know about.
Of course.
All I knew about him, though, was that he was absent a lot and that he thought this was stupid. And so I was like, I know what's going to happen, which is that he is not going to show up for the PTA meeting where we're supposed to do this square dance, and I'm not going to get to do it, and I'm going to be upset about it. And you know who was right? It was me. And I was very kind of bitter about that. I just, this past weekend, went on a road trip with my spouse, and as sometimes happened, I kind of just downloaded everything about square dancing to him as we were, making our way toward the highway to go on this trip. And I was surprised to learn that his gym class did not include any square dancing. Like, he is a year younger than me. Which, we were sort of toward the tail end of the square dancing gym class popularity wave. But he's still like close enough to me in age that I would have expected it. And he's also from a really kind of remote rural area. And so the fact that there was no square dancing, I was like, really? And as we were talking about it, he pointed out that his school's nearest neighbor and their rival in all things athletics was actually a reservation school. And he was like, I wonder if, and this is totally speculative, but he was like, I wonder if those same things about like square dancing kind of being like a tool of oppression kind of influenced that school, and then also by extension, like their neighbors. And I was like, totally speculative, but also to me, totally possible.
Right. Grounded in some solid logic.
Yeah. I also have a quote from S. Foster Damon that I didn't put in the episode that I wanted to read because like there were just so many revivals of square dancing, and they just all kept making the point. This is so old. This is like a return to our, quote, Anglo-Saxon heritage. We don't often use the word Anglo-Saxon on the show anymore because it has become this like synonym for like white history. And that's like, when we're actually talking about English history that formerly would have been described as Anglo-Saxon, like at this point, we are more likely to say early English. But we used it in this episode because that's specifically what people were referring to, was this like sort of imagined idea of a white pastime and reviving it over and over. So S. Foster Damon wrote, quote, "Then the Second World War swept away our last romantic notions that Europeans were better than Americans. The nation worked together as never before, and again, as in 1651, the spirit of democracy rose from the folk into the ballrooms. Countryside and city were one again." People have put a lot of emotional weight on square dancing.
They have. We have not gotten to the thing I really, really, really want to talk about.
Okay, let's talk about it.
It's hillbilly hair.
Okay.
Because while Western square dancing was something I first did in school, my first exposure to it was that 1950 Bugs Bunny cartoon.
Sure. Yeah.
In which Bugs, after a series of entanglements and whatnot, ends up calling a square dance with these two brothers, the Martins, and through his calling makes them do more and more violent and progressively silly things, which
I love it.
it's a skewering. Again, this was made in 1950, so like it is definitely a skewering of this whole idea that square dancing is like this noble Americana, as it was kind of being pushed in the public sphere. It also is, pretty unkind to people who live in the country.
Sure.
To rural areas. And it also just kind of skewers this idea of long-term family feuds. But one of my happiest moments ever as a podcaster was when I was doing the podcast Drawn, which is about animation, and I was interviewing Jackson Public, who is one of the creators of the Venture Brothers, and he and I both love Bugs Bunny, and spontaneously we were doing the call from Hillbilly Hair together. Whirl, whirl, twist and twirl, jump around like a flying squirrel. Like, it's the best. It's the absolute best. And so that's what I often think of when I think of square dancing, which I imagine people who were trying to really push it as a part of important American folk culture probably didn't appreciate.
Right. Yeah.
That cartoon has been censored in a variety of ways over the years. Sometimes due to gun violence, sometimes due to just violent behavior. But I imagine there are lots of people who would rather it not exist. But since Bugs Bunny was my first crush, I will always love it.
I don't remember. I kept putting it in and taking it out and then like adding more description and then taking it out about sort of the attire that is common in modern Western square dancing, which is like a lot of gingham dresses with petticoats and like Western inspired.
The petticoat part I'm into.
Yeah. And so like that is like it's pretty much described as like square dancing attire that is like really common specifically in modern Western square dancing. And then in the more traditional square dancing, it's kind of more all over the place, like in terms of what people wear. It's not our first social dance episode. We also did one on swing dancing, which is also a social dance and also has, some differently nuanced but twists and turns in its history. I was trying to get a handle on like what exactly modern Western square dancing involved, and I found this one page that was sort of like coming to a square dance, and it, to me, as an outsider, felt a lot more gatekeepy than swing dances I've been to, because usually when I've gone to a swing dance, there is a beginner swing dance at the beginning of the dance, and then anybody of any ability level is welcome to dance. And if somebody dances with you, you can just say, I'm a beginner. And if that person is a total expert, they are not going to like walk away from you on the floor. They are going to dance with you, and you'll make mistakes, and everyone will laugh in like the spirit of camaraderie with one another, not in like you don't know what you're doing. And this was really more like, if you're a beginner, like don't show up, but like don't try to dance with more experienced people. You really have to have learned all these calls before you dance. And I was just like, I get the point that instead of just having one partner, there are 4 couples at this dance.
Yeah.
And if one couple is struggling, that might affect things for the others. But like, it just felt a lot more gatekeepy than like what I sort of expected from something that is inherently a social dance.
I don't think I've ever done a square dance thing as an adult to know. I mean, the closest we ever got was when Brian and I took a ballroom dance class at one point that my employer was offering. And that did not go well because no one had explained to my husband that we would have to switch partners, and he was not very enthused about that plan.
Yeah.
He's like, but I want to dance with you, which is very sweet.
Yeah, it is very sweet.
And I was like, uh-oh.
Whoops.
We have to be that couple that's like, we're not dancing with anyone else. And my life repeated, but that time I didn't mean to be the person that was like,
oh no,
I'm not dancing with any of you.
Oh, I love it. I love it. If you are super into modern Western square dancing and like the things that I found that sound gatekeepy or like outliers, feel free to like write it and, let us know what your experience is. It just seemed to like a very more like you really you have to know all these calls before you can join a square. And I was like, okay, but okay. How do you learn them without experience?
Right.
So anyway, again, super into it in elementary school. I was so good at following instructions.
I love it.
Unless I thought your instructions were nonsense, at which point I was not doing them. If you want to send us a note, we're at historypodcast@iheartradio.com. We'll be back with a Saturday Classic tomorrow and a brand new episode on Monday. I hope everyone has a good weekend. If you like to social dance and you're getting to go social dancing this weekend, I hope you have the best time. If you would rather not do that, I hope no one makes you. We'll be back Monday with a new show. Stuff You Missed in History Class is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.